Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to another edition of Fridays with Sandy. Today we have a handicapping, and it's the first Facebook Live handicapping we've ever done. We have a terrific candidate. He has a great profile, Big Four, low GPA of 3.2 from a Little Ivy, 720 GMAT, and he has a really great group of schools that he would like to go to. UVA, Kellogg, Duke, Yale, UT, and MIT. Sandy, what do you think?
Okay, let's do the handicapping and the interview. We'll kind of do a hybrid here. What we got is Chris. He's a Little Ivy, Big Four. I'm going to ask him to describe what he does. On his resume, it says Risk Assurance Senior. That doesn't mean a lot to me, but let's hope Chris can explain that. The question is, the schools he's targeted, he's got a 3.2, which is below the GPA of all of these schools. He's got a 720 GMAT, which is in line with most of them. And he's, as we're going to see, he's a white male, so that's a tough bucket. But
he's an Eagle Scout.
Well,
and he played varsity football.
Yeah, he played varsity football for 3 years, and that is impressive, and that's something he should do. Okay, can we bring Chris in?
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, Chris, good. Let me just start with asking you to describe what you do. This is real important for a guy like you, where you work for a Big Four, but you don't consider yourself the typical Big Four thing, right?
Yeah, I think with a title like mine, Risk Compliance Advisory, it's a little vague. So I'm sort of the compliance ninja, so to speak, where we sit with a lot of businesses and we assess their business process, financial, or information technology compliance needs. So if they need someone to make sure everything's in line, we're the guys that do it.
The ninja part was good. I was with you. You're losing me after that.
Gotcha.
Describe what you do in some quick way. Like, I'm a compliance ninja. We've got clients in these lines of business, and typically what we do, they call us in because of what we do.
Yeah, so a lot of times they call us in because if they're a public company, we're helping them check off a lot of those Sarbanes-Oxley compliance boxes, but it can also be private startups too.
Explain Sarbanes-Oxley to an intelligent but not compliant specialist.
Well, SOX, it spun off after one of the bigger scandals being Enron, and so it was a lot of ways for the investors or shareholders to gain comfort that their companies weren't doing any sort of suspicious or fraudulent behavior. So we check a lot of different controls in their, all business departments across the company, and just make sure that they're following enough things where people can trust that they're doing the right work.
John, I don't get it. Do you?
No, I get it.
Okay. I think John is smarter than the average AdCom, and I'm about as smart as the average AdCom. So I'm going to ask you to explain that again in real simple terms. Just tell me about a recent engagement. Tell me about something you've done with a client recently. And just between me and you, it doesn't have to be recent. Just pick the most elucidating example. This is general advice for all of you out there.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a pretty straightforward example. There's different levels of access to an application. Obviously accounting, it's all based on software now, and you don't want everyone to be able to modify the numbers that they enter. So what we do is we'll sometimes check to make sure that only the correct individuals, so that's maybe VPs of accounting, are able to mess with the numbers in their balance sheets, so that it's not anyone performing fraud.
but that's kind of a gumshoe operation. Like what you're saying you do makes it sound very limited.
Well, yeah, and so you know, a lot of that work is limited, and so you get into some of the more unique engagements.
Let me give you a hint here. What you've got to do is discover the most interesting thing you do, and talk about that, and let the other people think. Well, that's what I do all the time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I just need to work on finding one that's easy to explain, but also.
Chris, do you lead a team?
Yeah, so I do run a team from time to time. Depends on the company size, but it can be anywhere from myself right now for an engagement or up to 5 staffs, including some international, you know, support in India or something.
So Sandy, shouldn't Chris pick an example where he leads a team of 5 people and dives into a really interesting issue?
That's good, John, but that's window dressing. What we need to get is the window. We need you to describe in the most interesting, impactful way exactly what you do. A typical assignment. For instance, oh, well, here's a typical assignment. You know, a month ago, I was working with a client that ran several lines of business, and you know, there were recent compliance changes. So I had to interview the heads of 7 units at that firm and make sure that they went through these boxes. And this was difficult because these people were a little nervous about talking to me, or these people needed to have things explained to them. So a lot of the role I play is both being a doctor and a nurse. I've got to make nice, and then I've got to make things better.
Gotcha.
Can you execute on that?
Yeah, so I think maybe a good example would be a few months ago when I was working for this holding company, and they own a major sports franchise that recently built a new stadium for their team. And so I took the time, sat down with the CFO actually and the VP of operations, and we reviewed some of their contracts that they did with the builders and the joint ventures that they had on the stadium. So, you know, hotels, restaurants. And so we reviewed to make sure that all the right signatures and that the agreed upon purchases matched what they were recording.
Still making this sound like something you don't need. You didn't have to get a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration for.
Yeah, you know, I think it's part of the business side.
Why can't a smart college sophomore do that? I'm just trying to illustrate. I'm not dissing you, man.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, I
so
think
what, are you looking for a metaphor? Like the doctor nurse thing?
Well, I'm trying to understand actually what he does. And then we'll get the metaphors. Let's start with the 4 before the metaphor.
So, yeah, I mean, I think if I expanded on it more, you know, those are the general executions. I mean, as a senior, I'm overseeing the staff performing those functions. You move out of the actual execution pretty quickly.
What's hard about your job?
What's hard?
Okay, let's go back into interview. Okay, so let's say I just accepted your first description and didn't give you a hard time with that. Sometimes I'd say, okay, well, tell me what's hard about that job.
Yeah, I think the most difficult part is just working with the clients. I mean, on the internal side, it's
that is the job.
Yeah, well,
what else is there?
You know, I think it's nobody wants to be called out for doing their job wrong. So when we come in and say, hey, you messed up on this procedure, or you forgot to do X and Y.
One hard part of my job is managing. Because frequently people we deal with at the clients, they're not used to dealing with outside people. So managing personalities, managing the expectations is hard. See if you can answer this. Substantively, what's hard? This gets back to why can't a smart college sophomore do this?
You know, I think for a lot of what we call legacy engagements, where we have had the client for a while and you're reusing last year's work papers as a foundation, it's not that difficult. Where I think the more difficult line of work comes in is when they bring in new regulations. So a big one for us is Europe.
new regulations is hard. Dealing with managing personalities is hard. And substantively, sometimes it's just very difficult to understand their own systems, to understand their own ways of accounting for things. It isn't just, you know, saying, oh, you said you've got 10 people on this job, show me their pay stubs. It's very often more subjective than that and more difficult than that. What you need are examples of, you know, what is a case where it's more example than just matching up pay stubs? What is the most subjective or difficult thing you do? You've got to isolate this and be prepared to upfront it.
Sure. So, you know, I think the most difficult thing at a broader range is just the fact that you can't just come in with an IT background or a finance background or an accounting background, because you end up working in all three areas. So you need someone who is malleable and able to learn all three. One of the most difficult—
Give me an example where an IT background is helpful to engagement you actually worked on.
Yeah, definitely. So one engagement was with a very well-known ticketing group that deals with movie tickets, and so we helped them out with a with a
monopolist. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it could be two things. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, so we were reviewing their sort of network infrastructure, assessing their cybersecurity threats, making sure that they were able to protect their clients' data and the users' data from any outside threats. So we had to break down and map out their entire cyber structure and things like firewalls.
Yeah. So we're looking for we're like a doctor, a nurse, and a police force. We're looking for threats, you know, in their reporting. We're looking for threats in their IT systems. We're looking for accounting threats. So we're the guy who gives you the apple when you do a good job. You know, it's like going to the doctor. Okay. I would work on that if you get an interview.
Definitely.
Okay. Okay. Now, my understanding of this is the only full-time job you've had since you graduated Little Ivy.
It is.
So tell me about what's good and bad at working for Big Four. This is a classic interview question.
Yeah, one thing for me, you know, I went to a Little Ivy. I'm used to smaller group sizes and relationships, so it's a pretty big firm, and I feel like you can kind of get washed out with a lot of the other candidates, and there's not as much personal feel between someone like the partners and the staff or seniors.
What question are you answering?
What parts I don't like about it?
Okay, it helps to put that as the topic sentence.
Sure, gotcha. Yeah, so that's one part I don't like about it. I think a really great part about it is it was an opportunity to step up quickly. Within 6 months as a staff, I was already acting in a senior position. So it kind of forced me to get out of my shell and do a lot more client facing sooner on.
Yeah. Question, if you're asked a question, tell me what you like and don't like about something. Which one do you answer first?
Probably the one you like.
Yeah, because you're positive, you're into it, you're not one of these cynical guys. Oh, let me tell you what I don't like. I'm glad I'm really good at that.
Yeah, sure.
You need to be a little more bang, bang, bang.
Okay.
Let me tell you what I like about the job. It's a great outfit. The culture is terrific. They're open to you learning. They have a lot of resources. I was well guided. The work is exciting. We deal with a lot of different clients. Every day is different. I quickly got into management at a very early stage. It's been a real education for me in managing people. And I like our clients. You know, they're the people who are the backbone of America. They're manufacturers, they're sports teams, etc. So I really feel like I'm part of the fabric of the American dream. How about that for an answer?
It's a good answer.
Yeah, good. Okay. Let's go through this standard question, which a lot of people just have a lot of trouble with. Tell me about your decision to go to Little Ivy.
It was, honestly, it was a pretty easy decision for me. I wanted to play football, but I also really wanted a strong academic school. I knew I wasn't going to be a D1 all-star, so I wasn't going to make a sacrifice. The school was pretty close to me, so I was familiar with it. I had family go there, and I just had a great time.
What do they call that? Did they come after you?
No, it was a mutual recruiting. I had reached out, but then they had started to actively reach out to me afterwards.
Yeah. What was different about college football from high school football?
A lot more time commitment, that's for sure. You can't take late afternoon classes because practice takes about 3.5, 4 hours between film and practice and everything else. And just a greater level of difficulty and commitment than what I experienced in high school.
Yeah. How valuable, this is something a lot of people say. They say, being on a varsity team was one of the most valuable experiences in my life. You hear this from a lot of people. How come? I'm assuming this is also the case with you.
Yeah, I think the greatest thing is you build this camaraderie. Everyone's going through a similar hardship. And so you really just learn to either sink or swim. If you're going to work together, great. If you're going to just fight each other, screwed.
How would your coach describe you, and how would you describe your coach?
I think my coach would describe me as
describing you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would describe me as dedicated, but also lighthearted. I was a hardworking player, but I didn't ever want it to be a dead moment if we lost a game or something. Like, I kind of was always the guy that tried to keep spirits up. But I guess the ways I would describe my coach, exceptionally smart man. He was a good leader and speaker, so he really was able to connect to the players, and he was creative with the schemes that he put out forth for the team.
Sometimes they throw this real curveball at you.
Mm-hmm.
They'd say, what do you think the future of football is with all this medical evidence coming out about concussions?
I think it's good that what they're bringing to light. There are smart ways to hit, and there's definitely some risks that are involved with the sport. I was an offensive line tight end. My head was hitting everybody every single play. So I totally get that. But, there's smart ways to tackle.
You're just talking now. You're not
okay.
Asking a question. You started off great. The answer is, I'm glad this paying attention to this. This medical evidence is coming out, and I think football will continue, but there will be different rules and different equipment. The end.
Got it.
Right?
Yep.
That's the politician's answer.
What about the handicapping, Sandy?
Okay, let's go to handicapping. What we got here is a very presentable guy. He'll do fine if he gets to the interview stage. He's trying to punch a little above his weight. You've got two problems for your target schools, which are Darden, Kellogg, Fuqua, McCombs, Sloan, and Yale. You've got a 720 GMAT that is below that is in line with 3 or 4 of those schools, and a little bit below. Now that's an okay GMAT. What you've got to say is, I've got a regular GMAT, I've got a 3.2 GPA, and I've got a job that, by your terms, is not as selective as most of your applicants. In other words, from their point of view, this has nothing to do with what you actually do. This is just the way they view you performing in the post-college job lottery. They do not consider a Big 4 job in risk assurance as selective. That's the word they use. It's just a mathematical term. It's not as hard to get as it is to get a business analyst job at either a Big 4 consulting company, or more likely a big, McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. So you've got to overcome that. What you have going for you is you're a presentable guy. You've got the football player story which they respect. And, you know, you're what I call a smart football player, which is a very likable profile. And this geology minor that we haven't talked about is also
Major. Double major.
Double major.
Yeah, the geology thing is, you know, real down to earth, and you know, you've been on United States Geological Surveys, and you know, you belong to conservation and geological organizations. That is in line with a lot of schools.
Plus the Eagle Scout. Big
Yeah, the
deal.
Eagle Scout, it fits in with the picture. Yep, that's right. What you have to do is package that in a way that is very smart and very pointed. What job, here's a question, both an interview question and an important question. What job do you want in 7 years? Or another way of putting it, name somebody, let's make it specific. Name somebody with a job you want in 10 years.
Ooh, name someone specific.
Well, or just the job itself.
You know, I think generally my goal is with an MBA, I want to go into some sort of operational or post-merger consulting with the hopes of eventually moving towards a COO path line. So, you know, 7 years, it's hard to say if that would be a COO at that point, but if that's a director, VP, something like that, that is controlling internal operations.
I want to be COO, okay, of a exciting, growing, impactful company that also adds value.
Mm.
That's the answer. And then to make it personal, you go, a guy I really admire is Joe Blow at Acme Corp. Acme Corp. Joe Blow he's a famous alum of my little Ivy. He got an MBA from Darden, and you should have, and everybody watching this show should have 3 examples like that when you go into your interview. It's also would be a valuable thing to put on your essay. The way you could start your essay is, a role model for me is Joe Blow. Here's why Joe Blow is a role model for me. My story is this. I grew up here. A big influence on me was this. I went to Little Ivy because at Little Ivy, I had 2 big influences. One was a course in this, which introduced me to blah, blah. The other was my 3-year football career, where I really learned, you know, to bond with my teammates. I had a great coach who was another role model. That's half your essay. The hard part becomes, and the more important part becomes, after I graduated Little Ivy, I joined Big Four because, okay, that's where you have to do a little bit of optimizing. That's John Byrne's word for something else. Okay, I joined the Big Four because, and then you have to give the best description of your work at the Big Four. I joined the Big Four firm because of yada, yada, and yada. And over the past X months, you know, 2 experiences have been very important to me. One was working with a team doing this, where I got to see, where I met a powerful COO, right? You got a story like that?
Maybe not directly to a COO, but yeah, I do for C-suite.
Yeah, great. C-suite sounds good enough for me. And the other was just working with my team. And that's the way you present yourself. You got it?
Got it.
Now, Sandy, Chris wants to take the GMAT again because he thinks he needs a higher score than 720. Do you think he needs to?
Let's say you got a 740. That might help you get into, okay.
Yale, MIT, and Kellogg.
Yeah, those are the most selective schools on your list.
Mm.
That could help you with that, man. You're in the bubble. you're competing against white males, little Ivy, real Ivy, and you're in and this big four is almost its own cohort. So that could be a distinguisher. That and a powerful presentation along the lines we've been suggesting might make a difference. It's 720 is one of those things nobody except for me in public would tell you to retake a 720 because the official line is that GMAT's not that important. Oh, this is the famous D. Leopold line. Anything with a 7 in front is okay with us. Really? Well, how come the average score over there at HBSD is like 742 or something, That doesn't sound like a random collection of 7s.
But unlike a lot of white males, I think the Eagle Scout thing, the varsity football thing, the fact that he played on a championship team is a big deal.
It's a big deal, but you have to present it and execute it correctly.
Definitely, yeah.
It's part of this story about what the influence was. A lot of people say, I was an Eagle Scout. Ha ha. What you have to do is say what it meant to you. Is that your dog barking, John? In the background? No.
Not in my background.
Not mine.
No dogs here. Except me.
So what are the odds?
Let's do the odds.
Do you want to talk about recommendations?
No. Let's do with the odds with the, no, people love the odds. Let's do with the odds with the 720, your current situation. I don't think you're getting into Sloan. You're asking him to blink twice. You're asking him to blink about the low GPA, and you're asking him to blink about the less selective job, okay? Mm-hmm. Famous Sandy Kreisberg wisdom, schools rarely blink twice. They might in your case, because the 720 it's not really a blink, it's a wink. I don't know. I think Yale might go for you. I think your chances there are 25% with real optimized execution and a solid and not screwing yourself on the interview.
Okay.
Darden, boy, you're their type. You're the Darden type. You sort of come from, you've got a lower Mason-Dixon outlook. You've got some history with the South. The numbers are not that far wrong. You're really their type.
40 plus 50%.
Yeah, 40 to 50%. Just don't blow there and optimize. And then at Kellogg becomes a low reach. They like you. You're the Kellogg type. You're a nice guy, well met, good guy. Hey, good guy, all-American guy. You're their type. Friendly. You belong to a frat. You're smart football player. Philanthropy and social share. They love that.
I'm going to just throw something out on Kellogg. Because Kellogg will interview anyone who wants to be interviewed, Chris has a big advantage there. They won't just look at him on paper.
Yeah, big potential.
And he really looks good, and he's articulate. He has professional presence. It's going to make a difference.
I trust you there, John. I agree with you on all of that. Chris, you got to up your interview game.
Yep.
Continue to look good the way you do. You really need sharper answers. You really have to go through. I think I've given you the algorithm for that. You've got to work it out for all the standard interview questions.
Yeah, I get it.
I think McCombs will take you. I think Fuqua. Those are schools where you're in line. Mm-hmm. So the reaches are the possible reach is Kellogg. If the genie came down and said you can go to any one of these schools, what would you pick?
I think Kellogg's up there. I've got family ties to Darden, but Kellogg's, it's really stuck out to me.
Good. I think you'll do well in either one of those places. And this idea of getting out of this risk assurance, compliance, head counting thing into a COO position, that whole story fits. Your whole story is consistent, and your schooling's
And Chris,
consistent.
what do you want to do with your MBA right out of school?
Goal, if not MBB, some top tier consulting firm, doing not necessarily strategy, but post-merger acquisition, where you're helping integrate companies and just trying to find some efficiencies, that kind of operational work.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What do you think of that, Sandy?
I would say I'd like to do strategy, of course, is very interesting, but I could also see myself doing this. You can't shy away from strategy. It's almost like you're saying, I'm not confident enough.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a very vague response, maybe a popular one. So,
Yeah. Hey, another piece of Sandy Kreisberg advice: fit in, don't stand out. It's applicable in a lot of situations. Saying if they say, what do you want to do after business school? And you say, being a strategy consultant would be really interesting to me. You're not going to go, oh, that's such a banal answer. Particularly, you're not going to say it to you, because everything about you trends towards that. So, that's the way I'd present it. Strategy would be very interesting. And, also the other thing you mentioned, mergers and acquisition would be interesting, because you really get inside the guts of big companies, which is what I enjoy doing.
Got it.
So those are your
I
chances.
think Chris is going to go to a great school.
Well, you have any questions, Chris, about how to make your story better?
No, I think you've given a lot of good points. Off the top of my head, not really. I think
In the words of Mark Zuckerberg, you can write to us later.
Yeah.
Your staff can get back to me on that.
We're already in contact.
Right.
So Chris, hey, thank you. You are going to be in at UVA, at Duke, at McCombs. I think you have a great shot at Kellogg. If they don't take you, they're out of their minds after they see you. Your reach schools are MIT and Yale. And if you want to take those schools seriously, make sure you visit them and see someone on the admissions staff during or before the application process.
Got it. Will do.
Yeah, if you really want the hard thing, get that 740.
Yeah.
It can make a difference.
Definitely.
You heard it here. Second. Okay.
All right, Sandy, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
How do you feel about your first Facebook Live handicapping?
Oh, it's good. You can. I hope I didn't go too easy on you.
I don't think so.
Hey, Chris,
no.
thank you, and good luck to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it, guys.
Okay, you take care.
Okay.
And to all of you out there, thanks for watching.